Let's try a magic trick. Pick a sand level, any sand level. Got it? Okay, now try to think of the music that goes along with it. Drum roll, please. Is your track something like this? If I guessed correctly, it's because I'm psychic. And if I got it wrong, it's because these games are usually rigged anyway and magic isn't real.
Illusion, Michael.
But back to the point. Why is it that sand levels in video games often seem to have similar soundtracks? And just for clarification, this video is about sand levels set in a desert, not sand levels set at the beach. That's a different topic for a different video. The answer is pretty interesting, but sometimes leads to some problems with cultural sensitivity. Before we dive into that heavy subject though, let's look at some common themes. Sand levels often depict a desert setting, to contrast with a forest setting or a water setting, and this allows for starkly different color palettes to be engaged. Once developers have committed to the yellow color theme, it begins to be clear that one of the defining characteristics of a desert is the vast, open nothingness of it. While nothingness can certainly evoke a strong reaction from a player, it can also very quickly get boring. So, what should we do? Well, let's throw some scenery that we would associate with a desert. Some pyramids, an oasis, certain animals, and lots of dangerous sand traps. Remember as a child learning about how to escape from quicksand as though that was going to be a large part of our daily challenges as adults? It turns out we likely will only ever encounter it in these sand levels, and the tricks we learn don't even work. I digress. Another common theme is of course the music, which is derived from certain melodic ideas, the use of specific instruments, or a combination of the two. Let's listen to a few tracks first. We hear the same types of instruments being used. Some sort of wooden flute, a reed instrument, a kind of hand percussion, sometimes with jingles, and some twangy plucked string instrument. Now these sounds are drawn from traditional Middle Eastern instruments. The flute is likely intended to either replicate or be evocative of the ney, a long cane flute that has been used in Persian music for almost 5,000 years. The reed instrument is most likely a zurna. A zurna dates back to the 16th century and is similar to an oboe, but the extremely demanding technique of circular breathing that is required to create the characteristic tone means that it is a very challenging instrument to master. There are two different types of hand percussion that drive the rhythm. The deeper timbre resembles the sound of a tombak. The tombak varies in size and material for the head, allowing it to be played either in a supportive role or independently. While the exact history of this instrument is debated, it likely dates back to the pre-Islamic Persian Empire around the 6th century. The more rhythmic jingly instrument is the rik. While frame drums with jingles have existed for well over 2,000 years, the rik is descended from the daf, and was given its name in the 19th century to differentiate it from its predecessor. The fourth, and perhaps most iconic instrument, is the kanun, which is a Turkish zither. It's a hand-plucked instrument with origins dating back nearly 4,000 years. Its distinctive sound comes from the unique system of tuning. Without going too deep into a very mathematical subject, the modern system of tuning in Western culture divides an octave into 12 even parts. This gives us the chromatic scale, which includes 12 pitches, ending exactly one octave higher than we started. In Middle Eastern music, the octave can be divided further, resulting in a tuning system for the kanun that divides the octave into 72 equal parts. This accounts for the twangy timbre of the instrument. To a Western ear, the notes are going to sound ever so slightly out of tune from what we expect to hear. Beyond the instruments and sounds that we hear in these sound levels, there's also the way the music is constructed. Listen, for example, to the music from Gobi's Valley in Banjo-Kazooie. The music is clearly intended to sound Middle Eastern, so how does it do that? The scale used can be described in Western terms as either a harmonic minor scale with a lowered scale degree 2, or a Phrygian scale with a raised leading tone. There are a multitude of scales used in Middle Eastern music that this is meant to evoke, but two fairly common ones are the Phrygian dominant scale and the Persian scale. The Phrygian dominant scale is derived from starting a harmonic minor scale on scale degree 5, and results in a Phrygian scale with a raised scale degree 3. The Persian scale has the same lower tetrachord, but raises scale degree 7 and, most importantly, lowers scale degree 5. A common answer to the question, what makes Middle Eastern music sound the way it does, is the use of the harmonic minor scale. This is not altogether wrong, since we can see that the Persian scale in particular includes that distinctive augmented second of the harmonic scale in both the lower and upper tetrachords. The Gobi's Valley tune hints at this lowered scale degree 5 in its B section, but for the most part, music in video games keeps it stable. The most likely reason for this is that in Western music, our sense of tonality is derived primarily from the relationship between scale degrees 1 and 5, and altering the 5th scale degree throws off our whole sense of key center. The only Western mode that alters this note is the Locrian mode, and it is largely theoretical, being used very sparsely by composers. Remember, though, that the Middle Eastern tuning system includes far more divisions of the octave than the Western tuning system, so these scales are described and used in an attempt to fit it into the Western context. The inclusion of quarter tones would likely be less appealing to a commercially Western audience. Speaking of a Western audience, let's think about the implications of using this music for these levels. Some video games, like Uncharted 3, use this style of music very appropriately. Drake's plane crashes over the Rub al-Khali desert, which is geographically where we would expect this musical culture to exist. Assassin's Creed Origins also depicts Egypt in the 1st century BCE using a musical blend of Western action motifs and Middle Eastern influences. Other games, though, take a more one-size-fits-all approach to desert level design. Paper Mario Sticker Star uses the same sort of Middle Eastern-inspired music. The background includes pyramids, and there is a Yoshi Sphinx. However, when you go down the pipe, you'll find a Shy Guy mariachi band, apparently flown in from across the world, and there are coconut trees growing everywhere. Fun botany fact: coconut trees have 2 requirements to grow: tropical temperatures and plentiful water. So while there are records of coconuts being imported to Egypt as early as the 6th century, they grow primarily around the South Pacific and Indian Ocean regions. But when it comes to misappropriating Middle Eastern music, one game developer stands out. Rare is an English video game developer behind the popular Nintendo 64 games Banjo-Kazooie and Donkey Kong 64. Both of these games feature desert levels. Let's take a look. We've already listened to the music from Gobi's Valley and Banjo-Kazooie as a prime example of Middle Eastern-influenced music. The level features scenery including pyramids, Jinxie the Sphinx, and King Sandybutt's tomb. Other characters include Ruby the Snake Charmer and Gobi the Camel. Rare is clearly and indelicately insisting that this level is based on Egypt. But for those of you less aware of world geography, Gobi is actually the name of another desert located between China and Mongolia, almost 7,000 miles away from Egypt. Cute name, Rare, but this ended up as a jumbled desert stereotype that mocks more than it represents. The second level of Donkey Kong 64 is called Angry Aztec. I'll let you feel however you like about that name, but let's listen to the music. There's our familiar augmented seconds, so clearly this level wants us to think of the Middle East, right? But it's called Angry Aztec, and there's a llama stuck in a clearly Mesoamerican pyramid. Wait, a llama?
What? A llama?
Like the animal associated with the concurrent but far-removed Incan Empire? Also, here's what some Aztec ruins look like. Not a lot of quicksand, or any sand for that matter. All in all, it's a cultural cluster. But to be fair, England has not historically been a shining example of how to respectfully acknowledge other cultures. Anyway, I think I was talking about music. Hopefully this helped you understand why desert levels have a particular musical style, and how that music can tie into the scenery and characters to either reinforce a geographical region or create cultural confusion. Please like this video and subscribe to see more videos like this, and I will see you in the next video.